Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I am your host, and you are joining us for today's deep dive. We are aiming to bring you a steady, objective, and, fact-driven analysis of the current global landscape.
Right, exactly. Keeping it very calm and professional.
Yes, exactly like a classic evening news broadcast, but adapted for today. Before we really unpack the situation in Cairo, I do want to note that today's deep dive is sponsored by ProWave AI, and it's generated by Stylo News, which is the AI-powered news application.
And that's actually a pretty important detail for how we do this analysis.
It is, because Stylo News is actually the consumer version of Stylo Intel Ops. That's a highly sophisticated software platform designed for enterprise operations, so government, the military, global business.
Yeah, which means you, listening right now, have unique access to the exact kind of intelligence tool engineered for global decision makers.
It's quite an advantage. And our mission today, utilizing those tools, is to analyze the primary patterns of events in the Middle East over the past 2 weeks, specifically looking at the overarching theme as of April 8th, 2026, which is Gaza ceasefire under pressure, Hamas rejects disarmament.
Right. And our objective here is just to present the facts neutrally. The perspectives of the key decision makers, the potential courses of action, all without, generating fear or panic, just mapping the geopolitical shifts.
Let's begin directly with the diplomatic efforts centered in Cairo then. Over the last 2 weeks, the central piece of diplomatic news has revolved around the U.S. Board of Peace.
Under President Trump, right?
Yes, led by envoys Nikolai Mladenov and Arya Lightstone. They have formally presented a comprehensive 20-point disarmament plan to Hamas.
And the specifics of this plan are, they're quite rigorous.
Yeah.
Which is key to understanding why the talks broke down.
Break it down for us.
Sure. So it's designed as an 8-month, 5-stage framework. The core demands are the complete surrender of all weapons by Hamas and other groups, the destruction of the tunnel network, and the transfer of internal security control to Palestinian technocrats.
Let me just stop you right there, actually. We throw around the term technocrats a lot in these diplomatic summaries, but, what does that actually mean for the average person living in Gaza?
That is a really crucial distinction to make. When we say Palestinian technocrats, we basically mean non-political experts.
Okay.
So imagine engineers, doctors, municipal planners stepping in to run the day-to-day things, the plumbing, electricity, basic law enforcement, instead of a political or military faction.
Oh, I see. So decoupling the civilian administration from the armed conflict entirely.
Exactly. Overseen by an international stabilization force. And in exchange, the plan offers large-scale reconstruction, amnesty, and a phased Israeli military withdrawal.
It's an incredibly ambitious proposal. But, as we mentioned at the top, it has met a significant hurdle. Credible reporting from Reuters and raw intelligence we tracked on X from accounts like Strategic Access indicates that a Hamas delegation actually physically walked out of the Cairo talks.
Yeah, they firmly rejected the disarmament demands.
And I have to admit, looking at this from the outside, the logic is a little hard to parse. Imagine being offered massive multi-billion-dollar reconstruction of your devastated home, but the only catch is you hand over your weapons, and they walk out.
It does seem counterintuitive on the surface.
Right. It's a bit like asking someone to surrender their armor while the battlefield is still totally active. Based on the intelligence estimates, what is the actual strategic calculus here?
Well, your armor analogy hits the core issue, which is survival and trust. If you look at this strictly from the perspective of Hamas leadership, disarmament without a guaranteed prior Israeli withdrawal is just seen as strategic surrender.
Because they don't trust the withdrawal will happen.
Exactly. There's a foundational distrust there. But importantly, it's not just about Israel.
Internal threats.
Yes, the internal security landscape is complex. Hamas is not the only armed group in Gaza. You have Palestinian Islamic Jihad, various heavily armed clan militias. If Hamas disarms first, they fear being violently overpowered by their own internal rivals.
Wow. So the arsenal is their only real bargaining chip?
It's their primary deterrent against both external and internal threats. To them, it's the absolute only guarantee of their relevance in any post-war structure.
And on the other side of the table, the Israeli government's position is, equally unyielding. They're looking at the exact same facts, but drawing the total opposite conclusion.
Precisely. The Israeli government, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, they operate on a doctrine of absolute national security, heavily reinforced by the events of October 2023, of course.
Right.
So their stance is there can be absolutely no troop withdrawal until full demilitarization is achieved and verified. An armed Hamas is seen as an existential threat to border communities.
So disarmament is a non-negotiable prerequisite, not a bargaining chip.
Exactly.
So we have a profoundly locked stalemate. The mechanics of peace are jammed. But if Hamas knows that rejecting this deal means continued military pressure, where are they finding the leverage to say no? Who is backing their play?
Well, to understand that, you really have to look completely outside of Gaza.
Right, into the wider regional war, because we can't analyze the ceasefire in a vacuum. The operational center of gravity has shifted so dramatically.
It really has.
I mean, we're looking at the massive escalation between the U.S., Israel, and Iran that kicked off on February 28, 2026, the strikes that resulted in the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei.
Right. And that event, it fundamentally altered the entire geopolitical landscape. Iran is facing this direct military setback at home, so they are leaning heavily into their axis of resistance.
To the proxy network.
Yes, the intelligence estimates highlight this severe multi-front regional confrontation designed to stretch Israeli and American resources to the absolute limit.
Wait, let's unpack how this axis of resistance actually functions. Because it's not, a traditional army getting direct orders from a general in Tehran, is it?
No, not at all. It's highly decentralized, which is what makes it so incredibly difficult to counter. Iran provides the funding, the ballistic technology, the ideology, but then they allow the proxies significant autonomy.
So they aren't giving turn-by-turn directions.
Right. For example, in Lebanon, Israel is expanding operations against Hezbollah near the Litani River. They want a secure buffer zone so northern citizens can return home. Hezbollah fires back, tying down a massive portion of the Israeli military.
Keeping them occupied away from Gaza.
Exactly.
But the threat matrix is wider than the Levant. We are seeing movements in Iraq and Yemen, too.
We are. In Iraq, there are elevated, highly specific threat warnings for Western embassies. Intelligence cited 24 to 48-hour threat windows for militia drone and rocket attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad and Erbil International Airport.
And in Yemen.
The Houthis have escalated dramatically, launching ballistic missiles toward southern Israel, like Beersheba, and critically, attacking global shipping in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait.
I want to pause on that point for you listening, because this isn't just a distant, abstract geopolitical issue. When shipping lanes close in the Red Sea, global freight goes all the way around the Horn of Africa.
Right, which adds weeks to transit.
Exactly. It adds weeks, which means the cost of your energy, your gas, basic consumer goods, it all spikes. This conflict has direct implications for your wallet.
It absolutely does.
Which brings me to a critical question about how these theaters intersect.
Huh?
Does this U.S.-Iran war give Hamas more leverage in Cairo, or does it just distract the world from Gaza's immediate needs?
It's a great question. According to intelligence reports, it's actually a bit of both, but Hamas sees it as highly advantageous.
How so?
Well, because the international community, especially the U.S. and Israel, is so distracted by the strategic threat from Iran, the pressure on Hamas to accept the border peace plan is diluted.
Oh, I see. They're buying time.
Exactly. They are exploiting the chaos to consolidate power internally, suppress opposition, and try to rearm. They think they can wait out the diplomatic pressure.
While the high-level maneuvering goes on, the ground reality is deeply sobering. As news anchors, our job is to deliver facts calmly, but the human element here cannot be ignored. Since October 2023, reports indicate over 72,000 deaths.
Staggering.
Recent Israeli strikes have continued in Gaza, killing Hamas police officers and civilians. Violence has flared in the West Bank. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that Lebanon must not become the next Gaza.
And the international response to all this is, well, it's exceptionally complex. We're seeing different players trying to navigate it in unique ways. For instance, Kosovo recently approved a proposal to deploy security forces to Gaza.
Wait, Kosovo, let's just pause on that. That is fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
It's deeply ironic historically. A nation born out of a NATO stabilization intervention in the late 90s is now stepping up to be the stabilization force in the Middle East. Geopolitical, full circle.
It really is a full circle moment. And on the activist front, we're tracking the Global Samud Flotilla. It's a pro-Palestinian maritime mission scheduled to depart Barcelona on April 12th.
Aiming to challenge the naval blockade to deliver aid, right?
Yes. And then culturally, we saw India take the extraordinary step of banning the Oscar-nominated film La Voix de Rajab.
The film about the Palestinian child in Gaza. But why does a film ban in India matter to the wider conflict?
because it's a perfect microcosm of the pressures on the global south. India historically supported Palestinian statehood, but now they have massive defense and economic ties with Israel, and they need Iran for energy security.
So banning the film is a delicate balancing act to avoid alienating anyone domestically or internationally.
Precise.
And that brings us to a really thorny development regarding the neutrality of humanitarian aid. The organizations tasked with mitigating the crisis are now embedded in controversy. The medical charity MSF, Doctors Without Borders, is facing severe whistleblower accusations.
Right, staff alleging institutional bias and anti-Semitism.
Claiming a breach of neutrality. While UNRWA, the primary UN relief agency, faces existential funding threats. The Israeli government alleges militant factions have deeply infiltrated their staff.
And those controversies directly impact the delivery of life-saving aid. Donor nations freeze funding while they investigate.
Exactly. And when we look at how the public processes this, the digital sentiment is starkly divided. Now, just a reminder to you listening, our goal is strictly to analyze the data. We aren't taking sides or endorsing viewpoints, just showing you the digital battleground.
Right. And looking at the sentiment data, we see three distinct camps. First, pro-Palestinian channels strongly support Hamas refusing to disarm without an Israeli withdrawal. They view the weapons as legitimate resistance.
And a second camp?
Israeli and Western nationalist groups. They strongly support the ongoing military operations. To them, total demilitarization is an absolute, non-negotiable necessity for lasting peace.
And the third group would be the humanitarian community.
Yes. The broader international humanitarian community online expresses grave concern over civilian suffering on all sides. They focus heavily on calling for immediate, unimpeded aid access, regardless of the politics.
So, given all this friction, the stalled Cairo talks, the Iran war, aid complexities, where do the gears actually turn next? Let's transition to the future outlook. What should our listeners monitor?
Based on the intelligence, there are three distinct paths forward.
Okay, what is path one?
Path one is the diplomatic push. The U.S. Board of Peace, with Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, refuse to let the talks die. They keep pressing the 8-month framework by trying to leverage Hamas's weakening ties with Iran.
Oh, trying to drive a wedge there.
Right. Intelligence shows Hamas slightly shifting back toward traditional Muslim Brotherhood factions. Mediators will use that to offer political survival in exchange for military disarmament.
I have a hard time seeing that work if trust is zero. So what is path two, the military hardline?
If diplomacy fails entirely, Israel maintains its security buffer and launches renewed large-scale ground operations in Gaza, forcibly disarming factions block by block.
Alongside intensified strikes in Lebanon, I assume?
Yes, exactly. A massive commitment of resources.
And path three, the proxy attrition.
The most protracted scenario. Hamas and Hezbollah continue armed resistance indefinitely. Proposing long-term fragile truces instead of grand peace plans, they rely on regional instability to ensure their own survival. Basically, a grinding war of attrition.
Just hoping to outlast the political will of the West. So, for you listening, here are the key events to watch. Monitor the Cairo negotiations after the Muslim Eid holiday. Watch for any further Houthi disruptions in the shipping lanes near the Bab al-Mandab Strait. And keep an eye on the Kosovo Parliament's troop deployment.
That troop deployment really will be the ultimate test of international peacekeeping viability there.
It will. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, peeling back how a local ceasefire is inextricably linked to global geopolitics. As we conclude, I want to explain how you can get your own personal briefs like this one.
Yes, utilizing Stylo News.
Exactly. Stylo News is an advanced mobile and computer app. It lets you download and customize your news feed. It pulls data from hundreds of verified sources, cross-references real-time intel from X, and cuts through the noise.
It eliminates the sensationalism, which is so rare.
It really is. It delivers the hard facts. We highly encourage you to subscribe to Stylo News to get your AI-powered news on demand at www.stylonews.com. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We appreciate your focus and curiosity. Please request topics for future deep dives and follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms.
And as we sign off, I just want to leave you with one final lingering question to ponder. If the geopolitical center of gravity has truly shifted away from Gaza into a broader, multi-front proxy war involving global powers, does a localized disarmament plan even have the capacity to stop the fighting anymore?